Have you ever stopped to wonder why the calendar is the way that it is? On the surface, it seems straightforward. 12 months in a year, 7 days in a week, but scratch a little deeper and things get really weird. For example, September literally means seventh month in Latin, yet it's our ninth month. And why on earth does February have 28 days most years? If you think there must be a logical reason, brace yourself. Our calendar is a mishmash of historical quirks that often make no sense. Today, let's explore how we ended up with this odd system, from misnamed months to seasons that start with bizarre times, and see if we can imagine a better way. Our calendar's weirdness dates back 2,000 years to ancient Rome. The Romans were brilliant engineers and conquerors, but calendar makers? Not so much. Rome's first calendar allegedly had 10 months, March through December, totaling just 304 days. What about the other 61 days of the year? They didn't count them at all. Basically, winter was a dead period that had no months. If you asked a Roman mid-January what month it was, they might shrug and say, none. Hard to imagine, right? This early 10-month calendar made sense agriculturally. The year began in March, around spring planting season, and ended in December after harvest. The winter months where little no farming happened were just bonus time, outside the calendar. That's why September, October, November, and December literally mean 7th, 8th, ninth, and 10th month. They were the 7th through 10th months, until later changes bumped them to the 9th through 12th. This name game is a big hint that our calendar was rearranged over time. So who added January and February? Enter King Numa Popilios, around the 7th century BC. He thought it was really silly to ignore 1/6 of the year. Numa added 2 new months to cover winter. January, named after the Janus god of beginnings, and February, named after the Roman purification festival. Problem solved, right? Not quite. Numa's revamped year had 355 days, still way off to the 365 days Earth actually takes to orbit the sun. And how did he try to fix that? With superstition and leap months. First off, Numa hated even numbers, so he tried to make everything have an odd number of days. Of course, to reach that 355 days total, one month had to be even, so poor February got the short end of the straw at 28 days. And that's literally why February is so short. Not due to careful astronomy, because 28 was considered unlucky. In Numa's calendar, February was the last month of the year, and apparently seen as inferior. In fact, when extra days were needed to align the calendar with seasons, they often chopped off the end of February to insert a leap month. Can you imagine having a whole extra month appear out of nowhere? Ancient Romans could, and it caused endless confusion. So by Julius Caesar's time, the Roman calendar was a total mess. Politicians and priests abused these leap months for political game, and nobody knew what date it actually was. So, in 45 BC, Julius Caesar seized the chance to reform it. He, the help with an astronomer, ditched the lunar luni system and created a 365-day solar calendar, with a leap day every 4 years. To realign things, they had to make year 46 BC a freakish 445 days long. Caesar's Julian calendar finally brought some order, no more surprise months, and a year length much closer to reality. However, Julius Caesar kept many old quirks. February remained at 28 days, and the month names, they were never fixed. And that's why we still call the ninth month September. Those names were never updated after January and February were added to the start of the year. Imagine writing a software update and not renaming the variables. That's basically what happened. One legend claims that Augustus Caesar laser tweaked the calendar to satisfy his ego. Supposedly August, named after Augustus, originally had 30 days, but he wanted his namesake month to be just as long as July. So, as the story goes, Augustus stole a day from February to give August 31 days, leaving February at 28 days. It's a fun tale that many of us may have learned, but historians consider it a myth. In reality, the month's lengths we use were pretty much set by Julius Caesar's reforms and slightly adjusted by later Romans, but not exactly in the dramatic emperors stealing days ways that legend suggests. Still, the end result remains the same. February got scammed, and our months today seemingly have random lengths that we memorize with a rhyme. The bottom line is the calendar we use is basically a patch Roman relic, and it was never designed from scratch to be logical. It evolved through political tricks, superstitions, and ego trips. And that's why we have such uneven months, and misnamed ones. And we're just getting started with the craziness. Have you ever wondered why January 1st is New Year's Day? After all, January doesn't coincide with any oblivious nature turning point. It's not the solstice or the equinox, it's smack in the middle of winter. And for those of us in the northern hemisphere, starting a new year at the dead of winter feels a little bit arbitrary. Remember, the early Romans began the year in March, around the start of spring. In many ancient cultures, it made sense to start the year when nature was reborn, and in spring and when agricultural cycle began anew. So why do we celebrate New Year's in January? We have the Romans to blame again. In 153 BC, the Roman Republic started consuls terms on January 1st, and eventually that became the default New Year's Day. But the big shift came with Julius Caesar's reform in 45 BC. Caesar fixed January 1st as the start of the year in the calendar, and he chose January partly to honor Janus, the two-faced Roman god of beginnings who could look backward and forward, very symbolic for a new year. Also, January was when the highest officials took office, so it felt like a local beginning administratively. This change wasn't immediately universal. For centuries after Caesar, different regions and cultures celebrated New Year's on different dates. It wasn't until much later, 1582, with Pope Gregory's calendar reform, that January 1st became firmly the official start of the year. And even then, some countries took a while to adopt it. Great Britain stuck with March New Year's until 1752. But eventually, January 1st won out globally, giving us the current New Year timing. So now let's think about that choice. January 1st is just days after the winter solstice. It's when the northern hemisphere is cold and dark. It's an odd time to mark a new beginning. It's literally the middle of winter, not a natural transition point, except the days start getting a little bit longer. In contrast, many other calendars make more sense. For instance, the traditional Chinese calendar begins New Year's around late January or February with the Spring Festival, essentially celebrating the end of winter. The Persian calendar falls exactly on the spring equinox in March, when day and night are equal and spring begins. Starting the year in spring when flowers bloom and the world comes back to life inevitably feels like a fresh start. Because our calendar year starts in January, our seasons are oddly split up. Take winter, it typically begins around December 21st solstice, but then runs through January and February into mid-March. For example, winter of 2024 actually goes from December 2024 into early 2025. Confusing, right? We basically start our calendar in the middle of winter, so the seasons don't align neatly at all. It gets even stranger. The way we mark seasons officially doesn't match how people experience the weather. According to the astronomy books, summer starts on June 21st solstice, the longest day of the year, and ends in September equinox. But many people would say summer feels like it starts earlier. In fact, in Great Britain, they traditionally called June 21st Midsummer Day, implying that summer was already half over by then. By the time late June hits, kids have been getting out of school and enjoying summer weather for weeks. So having the first day of summer be June 21st is a bit counterintuitive. It's more like the peak of summer sunlight, not the start. This is why scientists and meteorologists often use different definition: meteorological seasons. In meteorology, each season is defined as a 3-month block. Winter is December 1st to the end of February, spring is March 1st to May 31st, summer is June 1st to August 31st, and fall is September 1st to November 30th. By this scheme, winter is just the 3 coldest months and doesn't spill into the new year. For instance, winter 2024 would just be December 2024, January 2025, and February 2025. This makes record keeping easier and actually follows the usual weather pattern. It's a nice clean solution on paper. In fact, you could argue our civil calendar should do the same. Start the year on March 1st, so spring is Q1, summer Q2, etc., with each season contained within a single year. No more winter split by New Year's. So why don't we? Partly because our calendar is rooted in history and tradition, not logic. We've been doing January 1st New Year's for centuries, and even if it's out of sync with the seasons, it's hard to change now. Plus, the seasons aren't exactly equal length in reality, which complicates things. Thanks to the Earth's elliptical orbit around the sun, the time between solstices and equinoxes isn't the same for each quarter of the year. For example, the period from spring equinox to the summer solstice might be around 92 days, while the summer could be around 94 days long, and winter is only around 89 days. Our planet moves a bit faster in its orbit during the part of the year. So if you tried to start seasons exactly at the same date every year, you'd drift off the actual solar events unless you did some adjusting. So let's imagine for a moment that we could redesign the calendar from scratch today. What would we want? Probably consistent month lengths, quarters that align with the seasons, and maybe keeping the 7-day work week cycle. We might want the year to start as sensible as possible, like on the spring equinox or winter solstice. And it would be nice if the calendar followed a simple repeating pattern so we don't have a new printed calendar every year. Sounds great, right? Mathematically, it's not too hard to devise a calendar like that. As we saw with the 13 by 28 or the world's calendar 12-month pattern, the real challenge is the pesky fact that the year is 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 46 seconds long. This is not a neat number. Any calendar with the integer number of days per year will always need some fudge factors in order to stay in sync. The Gregorian calendar solves this by that complicated leap year rule. A reformed calendar would need its own leap year rule. For example, the International Fixed Calendar still has leap years like we do. There's no escaping a bit of complexity because of astronomy, unless we somehow adjusted the length of seconds or minutes, but that's a whole nother can of worms. So in terms of scientific possibility, yes, we can have a calendar where every season exactly 3 months, but we'd have to handle that extra quarter of day each year somehow. We could insert an extra day at the end of the year, and occasionally an extra leap day, but the biggest barriers aren't scientific, but is social and cultural. Our Gregorian calendar is integrated globally. All our historical dates, business contract, birthdays are all tied to it. Changing it would be one massive uphill. Imagine telling everyone that next year we'll have a whole new month name and that some of the dates will shift weekdays, permanently chaos. That said, the idea of a better calendar keeps coming up because the current one frustrates people. We've all struggled to remember which months have 30 days versus 31 days, or why Easter bounces around on the calendar. But will we ever change it? Probably not in our lifetimes. The inertia is so strong. It's a bit like the QWERTY keyboard. It's not the most efficient design, but it's too established to replace easily. Thank you for watching, and if you found these calendar quirks as fascinating as I do, please like this video and consider subscribing. And let me know in the comments, would you rather keep our traditional calendar or switch to a new one if you had the choice?